So here we are again. We've got these quickly cut out. You can see I've not spent a lot of time on making sure they're perfect. Look, that one's awful. You can see what I mean. It's got a big old lump in it. All I've done is I've taken the sharps off. These are going to get cut and trimmed a dozen times before this gauntlet's made. So why waste the time making sure every single aspect of this is perfect and they're not twisted and so on? It's just really not worth your effort. You're going to do this, like I say, half a dozen times between them here and finally being completed and ready for polishing. So just get them fitted and save your time for things like cups of tea, which seems like a really good idea in just a minute. But before we do that, the big secret then, the big reveal on how you make a German or a Gothic style gauntlet articulate nicely at the wrist is just the same as we dished this here. We do the same to these. It's really that dull, I'm afraid to say. And like I said before, stick a flat plate on there, it can only move in a flat plane. Stick a curved plate on there and it'll move nicely across this curved surface that we've already put in there. And that's how you start to get that nice drop off that we're after. So here we are back at the trusty block of wood. Now obviously the addition stump I've got over here is just going to be too aggressive. It's too large really to work in this space effectively. So what I'm going to do instead is use the ball peen that I made, that I altered slightly to have this rounded shape there, and you can see it's not much of one, but it's enough of one to do this. So what I'm going to do is drop this in here and just work my way principally through the middle, but obviously smoothing that out. Don't worry too much at the end, because again, when that's over the wrist it's flat, more or less. There's a slight little bend in it that way, but you don't want it like a U when you look at it down there, because you just won't be able to wear it. The most of the addition is in this space. You can take it to the deeper one if you want to, just for that middle portion there. Do plenty of it. Almost had my thumb then. Do plenty of it so you don't get lots of lumps and bumps. If you rush this sort of thing and try to save time, you'll save yourself about 30 seconds. It's barely worth the time. Just do a decent job. Curve the plate. The middle a little knock or two. There you go. And then you end up with this. And you can see there in the light that we've got a nice little curve that way. So we'll go and do the other one on the pair we're doing, offer them up, start to get them into shape, and then see where we drill the holes. So I've marked on here the middle pieces for the ulnar cap, this little bony outcrop here. I've had this one knocked off unfortunately in an accident, so all I've got is a dip there, so this wouldn't really bother me that much. But it's a mainstay of Gothic armour, is that you have this spike often, or this lump, a hill, whatever you want to call it, that sticks out there. But what we saw earlier was this impinges the backward movement of my wrist just a bit. Even if it's on a glove, which puts it about there, it's still a bit too close for my liking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this back, give myself a bit more room with it, and then we'll get this attached. But even on this slightly larger one, you can see, because we've curved it, it wants to bend round that corner a bit. Okay, so we'll carry on that, we'll get some holes put in it in a bit, and we'll see how the movement works. So here we go, we've given this a quick trim, we've shortened it. I'm more satisfied now that with a glove on under this. So we'll pinch this in to be the right fit at the minute. It's too splayed that way, we need it brought round. But we'll bring it round. This is only mild still, so you can just about do it in your hand. There we go, that's a lot nicer. I can see now how on my wrist that doesn't impinge the movement of my hand that much at all. So, we've got our curved plate. And what we've got to do is we want to match these two together. And you'll see very often in Gothic stuff, even poorly made ones, people always emphasise the bend backwards on them. That's quite straightforward to get because the riveting mark, the riveting hole you're going to put in, or the rivet rather, is there and there. So it's backwards of this point here. So they go that way quite easily. The hard part is to get them to go that way before you've even put the sliding rivets in and bits and pieces along there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this turned over. We'll do it over on the Anvil hall. We'll get them married up and then we'll start to see where we want the rivet holes to go, and then the little bit of fiddling and messing about that we do to get them working smoothly. So we've got our Anvil horn here, just scouting about for the hammer I'm after. Now you can use rubber hammers for this. If you use a metal one like this, just be sure to sort of scud it off the surface, don't smash it down hard, because we've got that curvature that way and we want to preserve that. And this is going to go, get rid of this sharp that's going to bite me in a bit, I've no doubt. It's a comic value, there we go. What we want is we want this to sit on here. Now don't worry too much about getting these exact, because when the whole gauntlet's built, one of the things we do is we get it in a vise and we crush it to the shape that we're after. So don't worry too much, it's bent over, it fits over the wrist, it's all golden. So we want to get this matching that, or pretty close to it. So bear in mind, when you're using an anvil horn like this, it's no good lining it up like that and then striking it in, because the edge of this is on that angle. So any hitting I do on this piece of metal is going to be on that angle. You have to make sure, if you want to keep this going sort of straight to where it is, that it's not like that, that it's like this and matches that angle there. It's pretty straightforward when you think about it, but the amount of folk that you do, I did it as well, you spend all the time doing this here and then think, why is nothing working? So match it up to that line there and just scud past, get the edge over and just scud past. Now I've said on this already that I'm using mild steel on this. These gauntlets are just going to be for a, well, they're going to go to a charitable cause that tries to raise money for heritage organisations. Quest is the group, Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust, and these will be going to there. So I'm just using a bit of mild steel. If you were doing this with a high carbon steel, obviously you just need a bit of heat and some tongs. It's not much difference, but they'll be good enough for what we're looking for. Now we've got most of our curvature in there. I might knock in a little bit later, but we'll start now. Just offer it up, get a feel for where we're at. Look, a bit of a squeeze in the middle there. There we go, just about. So So we're getting close. Now this is on that angle because what's going to happen is I'm going to have a rivet here, a cut in, and then that's going to come across on both sides. So what I mean by that, just quickly with the pen, is it will look something like that, and our rivet will be in here. Okay, and we'll keep the rivet back there, and then that means really easily that you can see if that's pinned on both sides, it wants to go that way really, really easily. I'm quite a ways back here, so it'll be about here. Yeah, just like that on both sides. And then to match them up, normally I use the bit that's over there, but we can use this just to match them up for whilst we're getting our work done here. Just get them on there, gently give it a little tap, and as long as it's within 1/2 mil, it's a tiny bit for our American cousins, 1/2 mil, you're pretty much there for this stage in the job. So that's that. And I can see that these are splaying out, which is kind of what we want to happen because the wrist is narrower than here. A bit too much there, but you know, there's no point in faffing about with all that nonsense at this stage. Right, here we go. So we'll get a couple of holes in this. Where we want them, vaguely on the sides there. And we'll get them matched up here. Now, I'm going to do the holes on these ones on the top here, whilst they've got to work obviously, they're aesthetic. Okay, I don't want one here and one over there, it won't look very nice. So I'm just going to try and make them match up nicely on the outside piece of the material, making sure it's not twisted, which it is a bit. There we go. The mechanical bit, if you like, the clever bit, is what goes on under here. We want to make sure that that's nice. Now remember, I'm going to be trimming all this a little bit further in a bit, so just make sure it works nicely. And it holds its own. There you go. Lovely job. So let's get some holes in there. So we can see we haven't got too much excess material. Probably going to cut that squarer in a bit. But we can see it's coming together nicely. Get the holes in, and then we'll figure out this bit. So here we go then. We've got our two holes marked in. It doesn't look particularly elegant at this stage, but they're opposite one another. We've got our plate, and just like any articulation, I want to start to get a feel for where it needs to sit. Now obviously that's no good because I'm falling off the end of the piece. We want it to grasp it. Okay, I would say about there feels nice. So give it a mark. See, and this is what I was saying before about our patterns and so on. Yeah, and this is probably going to be about here for a wrist my size. Vaguely. A bit more trimmed across there. But that will be like that quite likely. But, you know, don't get bent out of shape over it. Just make a start, and if it isn't working, how much time has gone into this piece of material so far? Next to none. If it doesn't work, it doesn't look like it's going to work, then just stick it on the scrap heap. You can always flatten this back out and use it for hinges and stuff, it's no loss. But I would say, push it a bit further perhaps. There we go. Yeah, we'll push it to there. Why not? Why the hell not? There we go. So, there we go. We've got a bit closer. So we'll get that mark, get a hole in there, and see if everything's big enough. So we go back again. I thought I'll save you me drilling a hole. It's a bit dull, so I put the hole in there to correspond to that one there. So I'll get a screw, drop it in. Don't do them up too tight. There we go. Get it extended over. Make sure that they're opposite one another. You don't want it like that. The actual slant of a gauntlet as it runs away outwards like that with your hand will come later with the slides that will pop in. So just make sure it's square. It's looking nice. You've got material under everywhere. We are quite close on this, I'm not going to lie, but we can figure that out. By that I mean, look, if I really push that, I can get that hole past the material. But that's okay. We can figure this out. Sometimes you can be coy about these things and blasé about it. I can see this will work still. And other times, you've got to edit it out and start again and hope you don't notice that I haven't changed anything. So we'll get that hole marked and then we'll start to see how this comes together. So anyway, I've made the holes. I've just been told my wife and daughter are coming back from ice skating practice. Got the Christmas show to go to. I'm sure you'll all be pleased to hear that. Anyway, we've made our holes, our corresponding holes on the other plate underneath. Stick those on there like that. Again, you want them tight, but not stuck fast. Okay, so I've got a nut and bolt on there. Some people use the aviation clips. I think I might even have some Oh, shows how long it goes since I've used these. I use these, little aviation. Oh, it's rusted solid. But there you go, nuts and bolts, these sorts of things, anything will do, a little bit of wood will do it. Get that one in there. There we go. You can see, look, how it's beginning to curve. We've got enough material in there to be able to take a bit of touching on along here. So what we do is we just marry this down, and there's the beginning of your curvature. Perhaps you can put a little bit extra in here. So I'll show you how we marry this down, and then I'm probably going to have to leave it for there, and we'll do the next one when we come back. But that gives us a good starter. You can see how just those two little bits of curvature in there are starting to work that out. Bear in mind we're going to have another plate sat on here, and some of these things have got a good 4 or 5 plates sometimes before they even get into the back of here to give them this articulation. Mine's just going to have a couple. But you can see how that movement that way, not this way, that's a doddle, that way is beginning to come in. I'll marry this off, show you how to do that real quick, and then we'll have to knock it on the head because my lift's arrived. And for this you can use pretty much anything that, well, anything that works. I use this sometimes. I use the ball stake we've got there. This one, been a while since I've used them. Knock them in there. Whatever works. Anything that works. All you're going to do is you're going to rest that across there, and it's most open. Okay, by that, that's closed. That's open. And you're just going to tap this surface. Now again, if this is a high carbon steel, you can get a bit of movement out of it. Cold like this, but you just heat the two pieces up. Well, you heat this piece up more importantly. And you just tap it down. But because it's a mild, just work your way along. There we go. Don't forget as well, when we crush this in that direction, it gets a bit tighter. But you can see how that's already starting to create that movement. And we shave this back along that line there, and the next plate sits on there can traverse even further in that direction. So it really isn't that difficult. I'd love to say it was. I'd love to come up with all sorts of complicated and convoluted things you have to do. That's kind of it. And then what happens is when we put the slide in on this plate that goes that way, always go away from the articulation, as that goes over, they'll let it go even further, and the plate will, it doesn't roll any further that way then, but what happens is it can fall off the edge, so you get an even more fluid movement. We've got a nice clip there that I can't break open. Jobs are good, and really. And then all we do, we take one of the other plates and we put it on that side. And you keep going for as many plates as you want. These are quite wide. You could sometimes find them only about that size, and you have several. Nice and straightforward. So I'll leave that there. When we come back, we'll have these ones on, and we'll take a quick look at the articulation, and then we'll move on to probably the knuckles. Ordinarily I'd start with the knuckles, but when I'm not feeling too well, I thought I'd do something reasonably simple like this. But we'll take a look at the knuckles perhaps next, and then see if we can get the two pieces to work together and marry up. Hope you find that useful, and yeah, see you in a week.